Once upon a time, two friends joined forces to bring you the best in horror entertainment. Brian from the north, Tim from the south, each bringing their own unique perspective to the horror community. Movie reviews, Blu-ray releases, beer pairings, games, and more. Welcome to your new home for horror. This is Civil Gore.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to episode 182 of the Civil Gore Podcast. I'm your host, Tim.
And this is Brian. And this one, it's kind of funny, this episode. So we had another movie planned originally, but based on some other things, we decided to change it. But we are going to talk about that movie at some point originally. But we decided to go with the new-to-Shudder, Let's Scare Julie. And, of course, I got a chuckle out of that because, of course, as everyone knows, my wife is named Julie. And as Tim pointed out, this would not be a title that would work for her very well because she's, as we've mentioned before, she's hard to scare. Especially
very hard to scare.
Especially in the haunts. We've seen, like, haunt actors just give up and resign after a few minutes. But I of course, I countered with, I think the only thing that scares her these days is when she sees another thing from Amazon that's like Blu-ray sized for the monolith.
Yeah, but I'm kind of glad we changed it because this is a movie that I think is going to be a lot more fun to talk about, and technically more fun too. I guess you'll see when we start discussing it. But let's get right into it because we, of course, had a little break. We appreciate you guys' patience as we took a little bit of time off, but we're back, and so that means a pretty good size first chop. All right, Brian, I did get to watch a couple of things, and first one up was one of these 1970s slow burn horror dramas that were very common in the mid to late 70s. This one was a Mia Farrow vehicle. Also, one of our favorite names to say, GODZILLA, was also in this one. And it's called The Haunting of Julia, but you may know it better by its AKA Full Circle. If you look on IMDb, I think it's actually listed under Full Circle, but Shudder has it as The Haunting of Julia. This one came out in 1977, and it's about Mia Farrow has a daughter. Mia Farrow plays the Julia character. Her daughter ends up choking, and oh my god, let me tell you, this scene was so frustrating because I've actually been through. I may have told the story on the podcast before, but Joshua got choked when he was little in kindergarten. And it really scared me. I mean, he was literally had just passed out, and we ended up finally getting it out of his throat, and he was okay, thank God. But so I kind of know that feeling of when your child's choking and how scary that is. And the freaking husband in this movie was so nonchalant about the whole thing. Keir Dalia plays a bit of a jerk in this movie, and he's so nonchalant about this poor girl choking to death, which was frustration number one. But anyway, she ends up dying may have does a impromptu tracheotomy on her, which may have been ill-advised. So she's carrying a lot of guilt. She goes to a sanitarium because she's like all distraught over this. The husband kind of is distant and kind of separates from her. She ends up finally getting out of the sanitarium and going back to live in a new home. And that's when she starts thinking that maybe the ghost of Julia is haunting her. And then it gets into some really strange territory where she starts finding out a lot of history about the house that she moved into. And it takes some twists and turns that I thought were really interesting. Now, don't get me wrong. It's very, very slow. I'm like Rosemary's Baby and Don't Look Now. It's very much Audrey Rose. It's very much in that same vein. So, and I know some people just don't like that stuff. I eat it up all day long. I absolutely love it. So just be prepared. But if you can stick with it, like a lot of those films I just mentioned, it has a really bang up, great ending that is worth a payoff that's worth all of the slow build up. So, if you want to check that one out, The Haunting of Julia on Shudder just came out recently, and I really, really liked it. Mia Farrow is excellent in this movie. I mean, she's a good actress anyway, but she's very, very good in this movie. So.
This is like her cup of tea, though, really. This
it really is, yeah. She's playing to her strengths here, so I really enjoyed it. The second one I saw was one I watched today called Grandmother's House from 1989, And Brian, you said you've seen this one.
Yeah, a while ago. I forgot what it was showed on. I don't know if it was on like Star. I don't know. It was one of the cable channels had played it for at one point, and I saw it. and as Tim will get to, I'm sure there's a very funny there's a character in there that you'll all recognize playing kind of a different style role.
yeah. So it stars Lynn Lesser, who of course was Uncle Leo from Seinfeld. And he plays quite a more sinister character in this.
Hello. Sorry, I had to do that.
That was kind of a surprise. This actually, I said 89. It's from 88, but this one is on Amazon Prime, and this one, we talk about Brian like beginner horror movies. I think this one would fit the bill.
Yeah,
this one's
yeah.
It stars two kids that are teenagers, and they're actual teenagers. They're not like 20-somethings trying to pretend to be teenagers. And it has kind of a almost like a Goosebumps vibe to it in my mind, because these kids, their dad dies, so they're sent off. Their mother had already died, so they're sent off to live with their grandparents, who they don't really know very well. And as you might expect, they start suspecting that the grandparents are not what they seem, and that they might be murderers, and so they get involved in this kind of mystery. And it kind of has that kind of a, like I said, like a Are You Afraid of the Dark or Goosebumps type of tone and feel to it. Not a lot of campiness. There's not a lot of graphic violence. There's no sex or nudity in it. There's a brief, very pre-makeout session. That's about as racy as this one gets. So this one I could see, kids could watch it just fine. And it's goofy. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's kind of campy and corny and goofy, but I actually liked it because the kids are really good in it, and it kind of just has that kind of fun little. If you just want something late '80s to just turn on that you might not have seen before, it's kind of worth a watch.
Yeah, kind of like almost like a little precursor to The Visitor, or The Visitors, the M. Night Shyamalan, where they go to visit.
Kind of in the same vein as that.
Yeah. So probably just not as, definitely not as good as that one. But
no, not
this
at all.
one's definitely more of like I'm gonna watch a kind of fun, cheesy '80s horror film kind of way. But,
and I always like discovering '80s horror films I haven't seen, because I've seen so many that there's a big one next week. In fact, we're gonna talk about.
Yeah, that you'll all be shocked to reveal the secret shame of Tim.
Yeah.
On this one, but. Yeah, so I ended up watching a bunch of stuff on Shudder over the breaks here, and then I also got a screener, and then a couple of screeners in here. But first, I'll go through the one called Violation on Shudder. This is a tough watch, I will tell you. It's kind of like one of those slow burning revenge films, female revenge films. Kind of recap it. Will say there is a very very graphic nudity in this film. And when I say graphic, just because it's unusual. I mean, I don't know. Should I just say what the actual thing is, Tim? Or
it's got male full frontal.
Yes, but like fully erect male full frontal. So yes. It's not, and I know like that's not something that's shown a lot in film. And I know Kim and Keto is always joking about that. They're saying, why is all the women showing their boobs and everything? Well, this one you get the exact opposite. And it's pretty long and graphic scene, like definitely not something you'd see in a normally American film. But the movie is one of those slow burns, really tough watch. I've seen, but it's a good quality. It's done really well. It's just, and I don't want to I can't go into too much about it because things. It's just one of those movies that it reveals very deliberately over the course of the recap, so you don't want to go and spoil. I just would say that just because definitely not one you want to watch. Like the opposite of Grandmother's House could be a starter horror movie. This one, no, keep the kids out of the room. You definitely don't want to watch someone who might get embarrassed easily in there, as there's a definitely a lot of sexual things going on in this one as opposed to the other one. And again, I guess kind of keeping in that same vein, this one is Untamed on Shudder, which I had heard about, and I kind of always sound interesting. And this one is about this. It kind of tells the story of this kind of like with that. And again, I don't want to go in exact detail, but basically involves this tentacled creature that kind of gives you this like sexual pleasure type of deal going on, and so this woman go in, and it kind of also like I guess does this weird resurgence to the person, but it's I believe it was from Mexico, so it's in subtitles. But it's another one that's like just really like it's definitely a slow burn, but really well done and really good. So that's another one I definitely recommend on Shudder if you're looking for something a little different, because you don't want to like sometimes you want to get out, get it. I like to from other countries especially. I like to watch horror films every now and then from other countries that get their take on, especially the current stuff. See what's kind of trending over there. I mean, this one's not that. I mean, I guess let me look up the year for this actually. This one's actually from 2016, so but it's still, I mean, kind of current. But actually, I'll give you quickly the summary. This way, because I know I'm hesitant to kind of give too much away, so I'll give the official summary, which it says, a couple in a troubled marriage locate a meteorite, initiating an encounter with a mysterious creature. Their lives are turned upside down by the discovery of the creature, which is a source of both pleasure and destruction. So there's the hint I will give you for that movie. But yeah, it's really well done. The performances are really top notch in this too, so definitely something to watch. Then another one we got a screener for. I don't know if did you get to watch this yet? The Witness Infection.
No, I did not.
Yeah, our good buddy Justin, who sends us some great screeners. He sent us this one. This one's one of those like horror zombie comedies. And, I know you've kind of seen that, that formula, a lot of people have seen it, but this one's done it in like a different way. It's kind of like this like mob twist to it. So, and basically the zombies are caused by this contaminated meat sandwich place. So it's definitely very good. Like if you like the mob humor and stuff like that, you definitely get that. And there's some amazing cast in this, like Erin Hayes. I don't know if you remember her. She was on Kevin Can Wait before they very famously replaced her back with Leah Remini and that thing, and which caused a whole bunch of like backlash on the on internet, because actually a lot of people were upset because they liked Erin Hayes a lot and they didn't like that she was replaced. A lot of people. She was also in Bill and Ted Face the Music most recently. She was in Children's Hospital, so I know you've seen her before.
Oh yeah.
And so this So Witness Infection is pretty enjoyable. She plays a really like funny character. She's not in it a lot, but she's in it enough. But but the whole like cast in this, and who you'll recognize too is the guy that plays if you watch Cobra Kai, the one that plays like the cousin that works for Ralph Macchio. The dealership. His name's Brent Ernst. He's really funny. Yeah, and this is like. He's like so over the top that he's really hilarious. So I definitely this one's definitely funny. If you like comedic zombie films, especially with like the mob comedy type of things that make fun of all that stuff, this one's really good to watch. It'll be funny. And then the last one, there's also a little film festival I'll talk about, but the next one I watch is the one called the Boonies. This one actually airs. Oh, sorry. So, Witness Infection's on VOD currently right now. Now you can see it. The other two before were on Shudder. This one's on VOD. This comes out April 13th. So by the time you're listening to this, should be out. And this one is hilarious. So it's kind of like a Wrong Turn, where a group of people go into the woods and they are attacked by cannibal like inbreds out there. And I will tell you, I was watching this movie, and I'd say about 40 minutes into it, I'm like, okay, this is kind of a lot like a Wrong Turn, just Wrong Turn kind of, different. Wrong Turn was a lot stronger on the genre here. But then all of a sudden, this movie kind of just like did like this turn. Like, and it was okay up to that point, but then it hit this dinner scene that like is almost as like the same kind of effect you had to when you see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and that dinner scene, like where it just takes it to a new level of like crazy. And there's a character named Cloyd in it that like just had me. I like texted Tim. I'm like, Tim, this Cloyd guy is hilarious. It's like this and the mother in this. I think it's just so wild, and it just like totally elevates this movie from like just being a pretty decent, like cannibal inbred movie to like, if that's its own genre, I don't know, and like just takes it up to a notch to where I was like literally like hysterical at some of these sequences with this guy named Cloyd. So yeah, so definitely check that out if you like that. If you're kind of fans of Wrong Turn, definitely get this because it definitely adds a little bit more, definitely more comedy to this. Kind of like maybe more towards, it has the Wrong Turns like went on. Remember they added the comedy to it. This is kind of like it, like this is like almost a microcosm of that. As like the just the movie itself goes from like more serious horror a little bit to like crazy zaniness, but and I will say they do tease a sequel, so I'm all for it. If somehow they bring this family back, it's pretty funny. So another thing I watched, and I felt bad. I was totally down for watching this whole thing, but it was kind of hard. Stuff was going on, just a lot of stuff was going on. It was literally a 24-hour film festival called the Unnamed Footage Festival, and it's basically 24 hours straight of found footage films. Which is such a cool premise. They were gracious enough to send Tim and I some badges to check this out. I only got to watch a couple of like hours of it here or there, but there were two that I want to definitely stand out. One was this one called I Blame Society, which was definitely in a more of an unusual found footage horror that I saw. It's basically it was a down and out filmmaker. She plays herself. I mean, or a version of herself, let's say. And what it is like, so she decides, I guess it starts off with her finding out that someone told her that she would make a great serial killer. So that's going on in her head. And she wants to see if, like, she could really pull it off. So she tells her one of her friends, which is played by Chase Williamson, which, of course, most recently, a lot of people have seen him remember him from Scare Package. He was also in All the Creatures Were Stirring. He was in Victor Crowley. So you'll definitely, very recognizable. So you'll know him right away. So he plays himself, actually as her friend, and she basically she goes on this motif that someone told her she'd make a great serial killer, and she tells him who's supposedly her best friend, that she wants to like kill his girlfriend, kind of thing. So she's doing this whole documentary on basically trying to make the movie while like trying to also commit the perfect murder. It's pretty unique for, like I said, and it just kind of builds and builds, and it was really entertaining. It was Gillian Horvat she's the lead and the director of this and stars in it. So definitely one to check out if you see it, because it's actually, you can get it on Prime. I guess you can rent it on Prime currently. It's like $4, but definitely one I would check out if you're looking for something different, kind of from the found footage genre. Then I watched one that was kind of more traditional, but oh my god, I have to tell you, this was one of the best found footage films I've seen. And yeah, wow. I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm going to butcher the title for this. I'm going to try and get it correctly and say it right. It's 1974. It's also known as just 1974, but I think the official title is 1974, La Possession de Altair. So basically, I'll give you the summary. It says a newlywed couple disappeared in 1974. Their 8mm tapes reveal one of the most horrifying events in Mexican history. And obviously, I'm not going to tell you. Now this one is like cookie cutter found footage, but done in such a good way and so gritty and just so cool that this thing is almost like, this one just like blew me away. I was not expecting it, and the ending is so well done that, Tim, you got to track this down. You got to track this down and see this if you can. I've been looking for it to try and find a place for you to find it. Mm-hmm. Sans being that film festival, because it was like they kind of did only everything once. It wasn't anything where it's like, you can get it on demand later. It was kind of like live and that's it. But yeah, so I was actually blown away, and it got like, if you look at IMDb, it's like 5.5. But if you see some of the descriptions of it, you'll see where a lot more people seem to agree with what I saw out of it. So definitely check it out. And another cool fact, it was actually done in Super 8 film. So that kind of added to the cool grittiness of it and made it more believable from 1974. So yeah, that's definitely another one. The two that stood out the most to me from this festival, that was the two that I liked out of the ones I saw. Now, granted, there was like 40 things shown, and it went throughout the night, and there was a little chat room going on, so I was popping in and out when I could. But like I said, these are the two I wanted to point out, that the two that I really got to watch in full that I really loved. So
Nice. Next up is the original movie we had scheduled for this week, and that is Game of Death, which is available on Shudder.
yeah,
And there's a couple reasons we chose not to discuss this one this week. One of them was it has a lot of exploding heads, and we had just done Scanners.
yeah,
And it just seemed like we were trying to go for some kind of weird theme there that we didn't really intend.
yeah.
And the other reason was when we got to watching it, it wasn't that it's a bad movie.
No, not at all.
Actually, I was quite entertained by it, but with some a few flaws, which we'll talk about. But it just I couldn't find the hook to discuss the film. Usually, when Brian and I do a movie, we have at least some hook that makes us want to discuss it, and it might be a certain director, it might be the plot, it might be the fact that one of us hasn't seen it before, or one of us has a lot of nostalgia for it. There's always some kind of little premise there that kind of hooks us into watching a movie. And this one, we just couldn't find that. We couldn't find where we were going to discuss the meat of this movie because it's very straightforward. So we kind of made a last-minute switch there, and then with the spring break, we kind of gave us a little bit more time to go for another route. But Game of Death is about these people that find, sort of like in a Jumanji style, they find this board game that when they play it, it actually pricks their finger. And
which I thought that was a really cool little piece to this. I like how it did that.
The actual premise was pretty cool. And they soon discover that they have to kill, how many people was it, Brian? I forget.
I think it was
24
or something like 28. Yeah, it was like, I think that was randomized it. I don't know if it was set the whole time. I mean, the detail like that's not important. You just know that it was a lot of. It was at least, I think it was like at least 28 or something like that, 25 people or something. And but if they didn't, after I guess a certain time, one of their heads would explode.
Yeah, so you had to keep killing people and making the counter count down for how many people you killed, or else at some point, randomly, one of the players in the games would just explode. So you have some really, my biggest problem with this movie, I'll just go ahead and tell you, is they attempt to bring you closer to the characters by showing like footage of them, like home video footage of them, doing normal stuff and kidding around and joking around. But it felt very disconnected from the rest of the film. I don't know if you felt that, Brian, but it didn't gel for me. And ultimately, all of the characters are very unlikable.
Right.
And
there was not one that you really said, oh, okay, I'm rooting for them. And that's unusual to not find one. Well, actually, there was the one, the guy like the forest ranger or whatever, that lady who had all but brief appearance. But
I just couldn't get past the fact that none of these characters were very likable, which means I didn't care much for whether they succeeded in the game or not. So the stakes didn't feel that high to me. I just was kind of basically just watching them eventually explode. So
one of them I was actually rooting for to lose, and I was waiting for his head to explode, in all honesty. But that was, I think that's a flaw. You need to have, you don't have to you definitely don't have to like every character in a film, I think, but you got to have someone to either relate to or pull you in. And it was like, the thing is, they weren't unlikable enough that it worked either, Like, if they were all just super, super unlikable, you would just get, but there was some that, just were so flat you didn't care, and some you just downright hated, but then no one you really liked, so it was like, there was no one you could relate to in it, I think was the key, Usually you find something to relate to, but there was nothing in this to relate to, none of the characters, but still, at the same time, the premise was silly and the gore was good, so it's definitely an entertaining film at the same time. It's just, I think that like you said, that's the one drawback to it is that it doesn't pull you in that way because you don't care about them.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I would not recommend it. I think it's entertaining. Like Brian says, it's got some fantastic gore in it, and I love the premise and the setup. So even though I have some flaws with it, it's if you're just looking for something to watch on Shudder, it's perfectly acceptable, and I think it clocks in very short, under an hour and a half. So definitely worth checking out.
And it got a lot of buzz when it was coming to Shudder because a lot of people, it's one of those movies that you hear about because of all the exploding heads and gore and stuff. So Definitely one. You know, if you see that synopsis, you know that's going to get some attention. You know, that premise. You know, they're playing a game where their head explodes. I mean, everyone's like, I'm in. You know, I mean, horror fans are going to eat that up. So,
the next one we have to talk about, of course, is we both got to see Godzilla vs Kong, and Brian, I've told many people this when they've asked my opinion of this movie. Is it dumb? Yes. Are there plot holes? Yes. Is the dialogue terrible? Yes. Are the decisions the characters make terrible? Yes. Is everybody in this movie a complete idiot? Yes. But I absolutely loved it. It was it's King Kong fighting Godzilla. What more could you ask for? It's so much closer in tone to Skull Island. It's and I've not been shy about my dislike for King of Monsters on here. I know Godzilla King of Monsters was technically closer to the old films, and a lot of people like it because of that. But I just thought it was
growing
so dark.
on me, I have to say, as I rewatch it. So as
maybe I need to rewatch
a little bit. But I think it was because, I mean, then again, it's like, might have been the hype. That was a big hyped movie, and so, leading into Godzilla vs. Kong, and maybe I was caught in the glow of that coming when I rewatched it, so maybe that's what... why I liked it more this time. I think I just got more of the connection to it this time. But anyway, yeah. But I feel the same way. Like, I mean, obviously Godzilla vs Kong. The whole premise of it is, it's silly, but and like especially if you saw the original King Kong vs Godzilla, that was with the totally the suits, with people running in the monster, and it's like super super corny. But this one, I thought. Adam Wingard, who's done a lot, done some good horror stuff. I think he gave you what you wanted. He gave you some like amazing visuals, some just killer battles between the two monsters. And I mean, that's what you want. I mean, that's what you wanted out of it. I mean, literally, it's called Godzilla vs. Kong. What are you going into expecting?
I just like that it was well lit. You didn't have to they didn't hide everything in darkness where everything was in shadows. I mean, you get to see these things battling it out in broad daylight, and I love that. And honestly,
on a ship, for God's sake, on an aircraft carrier.
Yeah,
I mean, come on, that's awesome.
But going into this, I actually expected you would have like this long, slow build up, and maybe some Godzilla scenes, maybe some Kong scenes, and then at the very end, they would get together and fight. But no, this movie has way more fighting between the two than I ever expected.
It's got like 3 battles, essentially.
Yeah,
3 full battles.
And these are long, drawn out, like big-time battles. So it's fan service. I don't care. I absolutely had a blast.
We're fans. We deserve to be serviced.
That's right. So I absolutely had a blast with it. Yes, I know it's dumb. I know the plot holes. I know all that. Usually that stuff annoys me. In this movie, I did not care one bit. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, the only drawback to me on it is that I wish I could have, but the theaters just weren't open in time near me, as I would have loved to see that on IMAX.
Me too. Oh my gosh. I will say, I thought Alexander Skarsgård was vastly underused in this movie.
Yeah.
I just don't think his character was given anything. I mean, his role could have been played by anybody. And he's a much more talented actor.
Yeah, that was weird. You're right. He didn't really have his Skarsgård ability were not used. They were not tapped into,
No. Yeah, I thought he was so wasted in this movie. But all that said, I mean, I could pick apart the film all day long. But and I'm sorry if y'all hear a bunch of popping, it's because my pop filter broke.
Tim's going popless.
I had to I'm going popless this evening because I had to trash it. It was that the clamp literally broke off. I'd have to sit here and hold it for an hour and a half.
Oh my
So
God.
I do have a pop filter on the way. It will be back next week. You will not have to hear my annoying pops anymore. So sorry about that. But like I said, it was fun. It was fun. I would have loved to see it in theater with a big crowd, but alas, it was not to be.
But you know what, though? I have a feel. I wouldn't be surprised if that thing gets, as theaters are opening up again, if that gets like a re-release into or just, because I mean, there's still not a lot coming out. I think it'll get put on an IMAX screen at some point.
I think so.
But I mean, it's still, like I said, like we both kind of agreement. It was a fun movie, and that is a popcorn movie in every sense of the word. And it developed the monster universe. It continued the whole story that they're trying to build, the whole universe they're trying to build. I hope that continues. I want to see more monsters. I want to see another Godzilla vs Kong movie. I definitely want to see more Kong because I'm definitely more of a Kong guy.
Yeah, me too.
As I love Kong, I just love his personality.
I'd go back and see this in the theater for sure.
Oh yeah, I would too.
I'd pay to go see it in the theater.
Yeah, and I think, you know why? I think because Godzilla really has no expressiveness. Kong has an expressions to his face, you know?
Well,
you feel like
Godzilla's a lizard.
Something.
I mean, it's like having a pet, like a pet monkey versus a pet lizard. Like, I would think, you're going to be more attached to the monkey. I've never owned a lizard, so lizard fans don't beat me up.
I know. Tim has just alienated the lizard fan community.
But anyway, yeah. So that was good. The last thing we have on the rundown is, this is not horror related, but just a fun thing if you guys ever want to play.
It's basically taking our time up for every free living moment when we're not doing the podcast or anything else. But
yeah, the game Outriders came out on Xbox and it's on Game Pass, so we've been playing that and getting up with our buddy Steve Cohn and going and shooting mutants and whatever other enemies are in that game. Yeah, that one's been a lot of fun. Server problems aside, when you can play, it's actually a blast, but they are having some issues right now.
Yeah, and actually, the other night we played around, and it was so funny. I am not someone that's really, like, I love playing video games, but I am not definitely an adept skill, especially these games. Like, I love playing them, but I'm always the one that, like, kills the least people. I'm always, like, the one that dies 180 times, and always need to be revived or whatever, or helped. But, usually the sports games are where I excel. But anyway, this game, I started to get the hang of it. And the other night, I have to say, I'm very proud of my valiant effort because somehow I got left into battle this entire alien cult by myself because Tim, who is definitely the most powerful in the game because he's been playing a little longer than Cone and I, he got knocked out server-wise and could not get back in. And then Cone got knocked out. So literally, I am for about 20 minutes hiding behind this thing, like just getting people one at a time, like in this most slowly drawn out battle scene. But somehow I hung in there long enough for Tim to come back. I swear to God, you know what it felt? It felt like the end of Avengers Endgame, where all of a sudden, like right as I'm about to feel like I'm about to get killed, all of a sudden this big swirl comes out and Tim lands down. And then Cone's on my left, and it's like, and next thing I know, all three of us go down, and we ended up taking down the cult. So it was pretty exciting battle there. But this game is very addicting, very fun. It's got the most F-bombs in any video game, I think, in history. Just randomly out of the blue, but it's really a fun, exciting game. It's very unique in some ways, and definitely, if you're a fan of like those shooter games, like Halo, and but like I guess some people compare it to Destiny, right?
Yeah, very very similar to Destiny. Yeah, Anthem is another one. I didn't play Anthem, but it's supposedly very similar to that. So
yeah, only drawback is you can only get 3 on a team. But I can't imagine having any more, like with the server issues that they have. Oof.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll get those straightened out. We'll be able to play a little bit more.
Oh, we did. We should say real quick too. We did play. Got to play the World War Z game online. We tried me and Cone, which was kind of fun.
That one was fun. It was actually a really good game.
Good, right? I mean, for a free game that's just sitting there, anyone could, if you games with gold, you can download. Or is that on Game Pass? Actually, it was on Game Pass.
It's on Game Pass, and it's if you guys have seen the movie. Of course, you have the like fast zombies that pile on top of each other. They actually do that in the game. So there's sequences where you're like trying to defend like a mall or something, and the zombies are actually climbing over each other and getting into the building and stuff. It's actually a really decent game.
Yeah, it was really fun. And then the funniest was when Joshua swapped in for you. And he's like, Steve, help me. Because Cone left him there. It's kind of funny. But that's another fun game. So we've definitely been video gaming a little too on our break. So
yeah, it's been nice. All right, well, let's get to our main feature. This week we're talking about Let's Scare Julie. This is from 2019, directed by Judd Cremata, starring Troy Leanna Johnson as Emma, Isabel May as Taylor, Odessa Adlon as Madison, Brooke Sorensen as Jess, Jessica Sarah Flom as Paige, Dakota Bocelli as Lily, Valerie Hubbard as Mrs. Durr, Blake Robbins as Uncle Vince, and Bill Timoni as Julie's dad. A group of teen girls set out to scare their reclusive new neighbor, but the prank turns to terror when some of them don't come back. So, Brian, I knew nothing about this movie going into it other than it was on Shudder. Right. Started watching it. First thing I noticed was it starred Isabel May. Now, some of you may not know who Isabel May is, but I was very familiar with her because she starred on the was Disney. I don't know if it was a Disney.
I think it was
show,
Disney Channel, right?
Yeah, I think it was Disney Channel. Alexa and Katie, and this is a show that about a cancer survivor, and she plays the best friend, and she's kind of this in the series. She's kind of a dork, kind of a dorky, nerdy friend, but she's very charming in the series, and my kids love this series, so I was very familiar with her, and I really liked her portrayal on there. So when I saw she was in this movie, kind of playing a little bit more, I wouldn't say grown up role, she's still a young teen, but a little more serious role, I should say. I thought it was pretty interesting, and as the movie went on, I started looking at some reviews, and the reviews are not terribly kind to this film. I think it's like a 3 point something on IMDb. So I wasn't expecting a whole lot, but I ended up really liking this one with some caveats. There's some very interesting things about this movie, and first and foremost, something I didn't notice until about 15 or 20 minutes in, and that is the movie is not one shot, but it was filmed in one take. So as we'll get to there's not a whole lot of trivia for this movie, so I'll go ahead and tell you. But
yeah,
when they shot this movie, they shot it 4 nights in a row, and they shot the entire movie from start to finish. So a lot of it was improv. It's basically a live, cameras following them through the entire movie, and then they took the best take, which ended up being night 4, was what ended up being the final film version. Now, there are a few little cuts here and there. Eagle Eye Brian spotted one of them.
You can't fool me. You can't tell me there's no cuts because I'm going to look for them.
And there's one that was pointed out where it cuts to a text message and cuts back. But even though it was cut, that was still done all in one take. So very technically impressive.
Right, and it's still real time. It unfolds still in real time.
It's all real time, and most of it's still almost one continuous shot, except for just a few cuts here and there. It's like one continuous take.
Yeah, and it's one more thing too about Isabel May that some people might recognize her. If you're fans of Young Sheldon, she's been semi-regular on that. She played Georgie's love interest at one point with the blonde hair. That was where she was kind of like the easy girl in high school until she somehow ended up going with Georgie, and she decided to change her ways and become super religious. But anyway, so you might recognize her from that as well. And she's like one of the main people in there. You probably recognize Odessa Adlon. She's is Pamela Adlon's one of her daughters. Her other sister's an actress too, as well. She's in she was in Blockers. So you'll definitely recognize her. The other characters I don't recognize. I don't remember them from being anything, but they're all pretty good as their characters they play, because they're very realistic, and I think that kind of what's done really well about this, because it is, like, I saw one review basically say that it's so realistic that it's like you can't sometimes you can't even tell what the hell they're saying in the beginning, because it's like this cacophony of all the girls different talking, like almost multiple conversations going on. And it's kind of like, at some level, it's a very jarring film. It keeps you very tense because it like kind of starts off really unique, where it's just like, there's no setup at all, really. It just kind of goes in, boom, and you're in the middle of this like girl slumber party kind of thing, where it opens with like a prank on Emma's character, and and then it's like you're right in the middle of it, and there's a lot of frenetic like tension going on. So you're kind of like always tense through this film. I don't know if you got that. Did you get that? Because that's what I got. I was always they always kept like kind of building into the plot these things. Like they had to be a little quiet because they didn't want to wake their father up, and they were worried about what was going on. Like and then there's one part where one of the girls was waving the gun, and and everyone kind of has this like weird frenetic pace to it in the first, like, I'd say half hour, which puts me on edge. I'm more of a slow burn leading into kind of stuff like that, like the build up kind of thing. And this really, like, there was no build up per se, because it kind of starts right in. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah, I did, and I think it was an interesting setup, because all these girls are over at Emma's house, but I guess that's her dad doesn't know, and he's downstairs asleep or passed out. I kind of got the feeling he was like an alcoholic or maybe like not a nice guy. And if he woke up and found out all these girls were over, he would be like super mad. So there's this underlying tension. Like, these girls need to be quiet and shut up because we're already doing something. We're already peeking in on something that shouldn't be happening because they're going to get in trouble. So that tension like stays throughout the entire film, and then that keeps building as things go on. And I guess we'll talk a little bit about the plot here. So Emma's friends are very like I said, they start off with a prank against Emma, trying to scare her, and this is kind of a recurring theme. And so they start to talk about, through the course of their conversation, this house across the street that is supposedly haunted, and they have some stories around that. But a new family has moved in over there. A teenage girl has moved in over there named Julie. And so they get the bright idea that they're going to dress up in these costumes and go over there and try to scare her as a prank. And Emma's a very reluctant throughout this entire movie. She does, number one, she's afraid she's going to get in trouble for having her friends over. She's not okay with the prank thing, but she's kind of being peer pressured constantly.
Yeah, and later you find
girls.
out there's a little, I don't know if you caught that in the little text feed she has, where she kind of actually says she has no friends. So she's kind of got that really moral dilemma of like, okay, I'm a new girl in town, I really don't have friends, I need some friends, so I'm gonna have to do something to kind of get on their good side.
Right, yeah. And I'm sure that's a very common amongst teen girls. I mean, even
anybody really.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, anytime you're the new person into a group, you kind of you're always like, it's almost like that, like there's this testing that gets involved. Like they the new people want to test to see how you're gonna be, and you're gonna want to kind of test to see how you have to be to kind of get in their good graces without kind of giving up too much of what you're like, what yourself is. You don't want to give up yourself to be fit in necessarily, but you kind of want to find that balance. And I think that part was played off really well in this.
And I think it's important to note that the character is constantly following Emma. She's definitely the main character of the movie, and you're always behind her perspective. So kind of the movie puts you in her shoes in a way. You never leave her throughout the entire film, even as other characters come and go. You're constantly from behind her perspective and following her everywhere. So that also, I think, adds to the tension, because she's the character that has the most stress on her in the movie, because of what her friends are trying to make her do, from her dad downstairs that she's trying not to wake up. Just the whole stress of everything kind of gets placed on you just from the camera viewpoint, which I also thought was kind of a cool technique, which you see movies do that, but with it being one continuous take, it's even more claustrophobic, and it's even more like you get that attachment even more than you would in a normal movie where there's lots of cuts to other characters and types of things. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Right, you're pulled in and you're stuck in there with her, so you're going through the same crap she's going through. It's like you're getting bombarded by these new group of friends that. And then you're also trying to they enter, you find out she's got a younger sister that she kind of basically, since she lost her parents, she's kind of almost has that maternal role to her too. So she's got a lot of stuff going on. And it's almost, and literally the movie starts with her being woken up by a prank, this crazy prank. So it's like, you have that's happened to everybody, right? You ever wake up suddenly, or someone wakes you up after you've been in a deep sleep, and then you're like that, that's what you feel like almost from the beginning of this movie all the way to the middle, till it finally gets to this, till it finally starts to move the plot along. And why some people may criticize that, I think that's what made it kind of effective to me.
Well, I understand the criticisms of the movie, because a lot of the reviews I read said, here's my problem with it. It does a great job building suspense and building dread, and you're constantly waiting for something to happen that never does. And I kind of agree to that to an extent. I don't think the movie did the best job of paying off what it builds to. And that's where I think the one take thing kind of hurt it. Because they are doing this in real time. There's only so much you can do in real time to have some killer climax. And I think that's where the movie suffered. So the movie's biggest strength being that one take claustrophobia, all taking place in essentially one setting for most of the movie until they go across the street. That is its biggest strength, but it's also its biggest downfall in the end, because you don't really get the payoff that you've been expecting. Now, for me personally, I don't necessarily have to have a huge payoff. I enjoy it when it happens, but I do enjoy movies just for the feeling of dread throughout.
Yeah.
And the anticipation. So just like I talked about with The Haunting of Julia earlier in the show, I am perfectly content sitting there for 2 hours watching, quote unquote, nothing happen. As long as there's a slow build of dread, I'm perfectly fine with it. I have the patience to stick it out. And I like that about this movie, and I appreciated it about this movie. Even when the payoff wasn't as great as I had hoped, I still liked it enough from that aspect of it that I could that I enjoyed it more than a lot of the reviewers apparently did.
Yeah, and there's actually another good point that I thought of while you were just saying that too. And this is something that maybe slightly spoilers, I don't know, but one of the things I thought was cool is usually in these type of movies, you know, there's this like, you know, in a lot of horror movies, there's usually a kind of sort of a safe space that someone can find. In this one, I figured like their home base, which was their house, was just as creepy as the house that they go to investigate, so to speak. Because like in there, like they have the creepy uncle in there that has a whole side plot which I think was completely done to as like sort of like a mini half parallel, half misdirection.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I said her dad. I meant her uncle. It was Emma's uncle.
Oh yeah, and so there's that going on. That's creepy, and the fact that they're literally sneaking around their own house because they're worried, and then they go to someone else. And if you think about it, what balls? I mean, you know, to like you're basically breaking into someone's house you don't know to prank them. I mean, it'd be one thing if you're going to prank someone you know like that, and you're entering their house. I mean, that's really like ballsy, and the whole like I think like the you know, there's definitely like it's like there's a couple of nods to obviously like you know, like Blair Witch kind of deal and a lot of other like almost found footage movies. And it's not even a found footage movie, which is kind of weird. It's like, but there's a lot of found footage elements to this in some way. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of disorienting, but I took that was one of the things I liked about it, that it was kind of disorienting. But I did, you know, there were a couple of things where I'm like, well, why did they mention that and they don't deliver it? But then as you think of it as a whole, it kind of makes more sense. I just think you're like, there's a lot to kind of like focus on in there. There's like, and it's hard to almost, like I watched it twice. It's hard to catch like a lot of the stuff, especially in the beginning scene when they are doing a lot of talking, and then like Isabel May's character, which is Taylor, she starts to tell you a couple of things that you're supposed to think is going to totally propel the story, but it really actually is kind of like a side story kind of deal. And I mean, they do one of her things they pay off with at the end, but one of them that's kind of not really, and you don't really understand what it is. And the whole thing with the mother, you going to pick the mother up at the airport, was like a weird thing.
A weird
like you
side tangent,
yeah, like you weren't sure if that was a real thing or not a thing, and it's kind of, the whole thing was just odd, you know, because like they go run off there, and then like, you know, one of the girls comes back, the other one comes back later, and then the other one just goes off to the airport right from that person's house. Like they literally supposedly go from pranking this girl to go picking her mother up at the airport. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff, but I think it's intentional to disorient you.
And I think it's not totally unrealistic. Like, to me, that sounds like something when I was a teenager. That's some crazy dumb stuff we would do. Like, we would be off doing something, and then we'd say, "Oh, by the way, I forgot, I got to go pick up my mom," and that would just like take off. I mean, that seems realistic to me, as weird as it seems. But I think you have to approach this movie from maybe two angles. The first angle being the technical aspect, and just appreciating it that they did this in one take, which I thought was great. And I love the improv the actors did. I thought it was very realistic dialogue. Yeah. I love that piece of it and how realistic that seemed. And then I think you also have to approach it as, don't go looking for some giant Blair Witch payoff. Just just look at it as an experience,
But
a slice of life.
But you do get some creepy stuff. You do get, if you're looking for some creepy imagery, you do get that at least. You will get that.
Yeah, yeah, and you kind of have to also appreciate, and I appreciate this. When the dread of somebody might find you. I don't know if you've ever. I mean, we've talked about it on the show before. We've done little off-topic things, but we used to like go out in the woods and play like Jason. And we'd have one kid dress up in a hockey mask and try to find you. And I remember like hiding in the trees and just being so scared that somebody's going to see you.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of tension in this movie. Like, is her uncle going to wake up? So there's a big tense scene there where she's trying to go grab the keys from him. And then later on when they go to Julie's house, there's some sequences where you have to appreciate that fear of being discovered. That's another thing that drives the fear in this movie. So if you can appreciate things on that level, I think you'll get some enjoyment out of it. If you are looking for like a scare jump scare after jump scare and payoff after payoff, this is not that type of movie.
No, you're not getting that. You'll get a little of it. You get a taste. You get some jump scares. You get some payoff. But the thing is like it's like in real life, you don't get a payoff for everything, do you? No. Some things are going to happen, and that's it. It's a one-off. But this one, people I think are prone to expect a movie though they're going to open something up. You expect them to give you everything inside of it. That's not that's not this movie, which is definitely not a knock on it. But I could see, it's funny. I just think of this, right? Here you get. You get so many people out there saying, oh, my God, I've seen this before. Same old movie, same old movie, same old movie. And then when someone dares to do something a little different, you criticize why it's not at some level. And you may not be realizing people are doing this, but there are critics out there that will then criticize it for being, like, not telling you everything. But then if they did, it would have been they would have guaranteed you say, well, it was just like this movie. So it's like, it's kind of funny. So it's like, that's why you almost have to, whether or not it's your cup of tea or not, you have to give a lot of respect and appreciate these type of films that dare to be like, go against the grain, and still try and deliver the elements that you want, but in a different way. And I think that's why this should get some credit. And I definitely think it's like, I would recommend it to anyone that has Shudder. This is definitely one to put on your list to watch, because I don't think you will end up being disappointed in it.
I've never quite seen. Yeah, it's one of those things like you don't expect to go into a movie literally seeing an hour and a half of real time somebody's life, and that's essentially what you're dropping in on this evening and watching it unfold in real time, and that means there's not going to be something popping out and happening every 2 minutes, because it's a real time drop in on somebody else's conversations, and so you have to kind of go in with that mindset. But if you do, I think you have to admire the take he did on it. I've never seen a movie quite like this in which they attempted something like this. I've seen one take movies. I've seen like One Cut of the Dead. I've seen movies that use a lot of improv. I've seen movies that are kind of pseudo real time, but I've never seen it all combined quite like this, and especially in a horror movie. So I would definitely check it out if you got Shudder. It's an interesting title.
And that's, speaking of that, just again real quick with Shudder, that's what I love about them, is that they give you such a variety of things. They give you some great foreign stuff. Gives you a movie like this. You'll get the slashers. You'll get some of the mainstream horror things that come out. So they do just an amazing. Like, I know we've sung their praises since the beginning of this podcast, but just the fact that like this movie is on Shudder is exactly what I love about Shudder. Yeah,
definitely. This is not a movie I would have seen otherwise.
Nope. Probably would have totally gone past me unless I happened to catch it on cable one day. And I don't know, like, depending on where I caught it from, if it was something I'd even bother to watch again. But so I'm glad it was on Shudder, and we got to watch it, because actually, it's funny. The more we discussed it, the more of like it's growing on me even more. I have to say. Funny how that works, when you finally talk to someone about a movie, you're like, hey, you know what? Actually, you find yourself liking it maybe even more than you thought.
I tend to that happens a lot to me when I watch director's commentaries all the time. I always appreciate the movie more after somebody's talked about it for 2 hours. So, Brian, what did you have for the beer pairing for Let's Scare Julie?
So this was actually was kind of a tough one to find because I was looking for different things, but then I found one I think that works perfectly, and it's first of all, I love this brewery. It's for the name of it. I haven't been to it, but it's called Angry Scotsman Brewing out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and their beer is called Peer Pressure, which is definitely a great title for when you see this movie. 7.1%, or 7.10%, sorry, which is actually pretty strong for this type of beer. It's a classic New England style IPA. So, I mean, usually the New England style IPAs, I notice, are tad lower, like maybe in the 6s. So this is good. This is a nice, strong beer. Golden hazy body, deep and fluffy white head, and bold aromas of mango and citrus. Soft bitterness from the late addition Citra hops. Complement flavors. I know, yeah, that's it. Citra hops, I'm sold. Complement flavors of juicy tropical fruit, while the HBC 472 dry hop add notes of coconut and woody complexity in the finish. So this sounds like a absolutely delicious New England style IPA that I think I need to try and get a hold of.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for hazy IPAs, mango, citrus, anything. You put that in an IPA, I'm there. All day long.
Plus anytime with Citra hops in it, I'm almost like it's almost guaranteed I'm gonna like the beer.
Yeah. All right, so let's go to our triple threat. You guys have been waiting a while for this one.
Yes. and David McHugh did get this one, by the way,
and he made sure that
we won pretty fast.
We made sure we had to give him credit because he called us out on Twitter for making sure.
Yes, he's like, hey, just because you took a week off, don't forget. So we would never forget David McHugh. He provides so much like stuff for us.
Yeah. So good job on that. So we were looking for an actor or actress, and the answer was Brink Stevens. Clue number 1, including announced and in-production titles, I have over 200 credits, primarily horror films. Brink has had a long history in the B and horror movie genre and is still working today. Clue number 2, I am directing and starring in a sequel to a movie I starred in the 80s. So Brink is directing and starring in Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama 2 after starring in the 1988 original, which I cannot wait for that sequel. That's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Clue number 3, I was on the cover of the premiere issue of the now defunct American Men's magazine that focused on film and television actresses. Brink was on the cover of Femme Fatale's magazine, which is in circulation from 1992 to 2008.
Do you remember that magazine? And this is a very famous cover. Everyone has seen this cover where she's like she's covering her top area there, and she's kind of got the vampire look, where she's got the fangs. So I'm sure if you look this up, you guaranteed you will have seen this title before, this picture before. I think she also has this picture at conventions. It's one of her most popular pictures, I believe, that gets signed.
Yeah.
So, and she is just great. She's really good. I mean, she's been stuff for so many years that she's such a true scream queen, and one of the early scream queens from, Linnea Quigley, Michelle Bauer. That's it. And I obviously was inspired to put her as a trivia after getting those great Scream Queen documentaries. So.
Oh yeah, good. All right, so our triple threat for this week, we are looking for another actor or actress. Here are your clues. Listen closely. Clue number 1. I auditioned for a popular character in one of the major horror franchises, but didn't get it, only to win the role in another major horror franchise as another very popular character.
Yeah, that's a little wordy, but if you play that back in slow speed, you'll hear Tim's dulcet tones just mesmerize you as he repeats that one. But that's an important clue. So,
clue number 2, I have played my most known role technically 3 times. And clue number 3, I once had a role in the Star Trek universe. Who am I?
This one might be a little tough.
This one could be tough, yeah.
I mean,
the first clue is probably huge.
Yeah, you gotta really focus in on those clues, and I think you can get it. I'm counting on David McHugh again, though. I think he'll get it. He may hate us for this one, but I think he'll get it.
All right. So speaking of David McHugh, our fan topic food question of the week. This is a good one, Brian. I had to think about this one for a little bit.
This one's tough. I'm still kind of struggling my head on this one.
So the question is, which horror movie are you most thankful for? Now, I have an answer. This one immediately came to me.
All right, I'm gonna let you go first then, because I'm still kind of trying to cultivate my answer here.
Okay, mine without a doubt is The Shining. The reason being is it's the first horror movie I can remember catching a glimpse of. and I've told this story before on the show, but my babysitter was watching The Shining in the other room. I crept out of bed, was not supposed to be out of bed, and I went down the hallway and I hid behind the couch and watched some of The Shining, and I happened to right on the scene with the two twins in the hallway. Scared me to death. That was really my first exposure to a horror movie, and it's just branded in my mind, and there's no doubt in my mind that set off my love for horror movies later on. And it also, the reason I'm most thankful for it is not only because it kind of catapulted my love of horror, but it also catapulted my love of Stephen King. So even though Stephen King doesn't like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, he can thank that movie for me being a diehard, lifelong Stephen King fan, because The Shining was one of the first Stephen King books I read once I got old enough to read, adult novels as a early teenager. The Shining was one of the first ones I went to because of the movie, and that just I devoured everything Stephen King wrote after that, and of course that just reinforced my love of horror and all things Stephen King from then on out. So The Shining, without a doubt, of any other horror movie, has to be the most critical catalyst for my horror movie love in my entire life. That it can all be traced back to The Shining, and that's why it's still my number one horror movie of all time.
The more I'm thinking of it, so I'm trying to, and based on your answer, kind of cemented this a little, so, or for a little different reason. So I think I might have to say, now this is might be an odd choice coming from you. I mean, well, I'll preface with this. Definitely one of them I'm thankful for was the original Halloween, because that was one of the earlier ones that I saw, and definitely got my horror juices flowing because of I love the slasher format, and but it definitely was one of my favorite subgenres in there, and of course I'm thankful for it because of what it did for horror. Like it spawned so many, like, everyone, like, I gotta make a holiday movie, so it's like, look at all my favorite movies that came out of that. Friday the 13th, My Bloody Valentine, all these, like these movies that like did that whole holiday thing afterwards, and that whole slasher format. So I'm definitely thankful for that. But now that I think about it, I think the one I would pick would be Salem's Lot, because for this reason. There's a scene, I'm jaded to a lot of things in there, and as you know, I've discussed this many a times, but there's still that scene. The fact that scene still creeps me out to almost the same level it did back when I first saw it as a little kid. To me, that is, I have to be thankful for that. That's something that so old and such a basic, easy little horror effect of that kid floating out the window. And that to this day, I mean, how many years later, and it still creeps me out to the point of whenever I see that effect in any other horror movie, it still kind of creeps me out. So, I mean, that's gotta. I have to think that might have to be it just for that reason alone. Is that like that it developed a rare thing that still creeps me out to no end, like literally, like, and maybe as recent, remember as Dark of the Wicked, there was that sequence where the mother was like kind of floating out in the field, like anything that just floats out where it's not supposed to still creeps me out, and it all goes back to the brother in Salem's Lot. So that might be the one I do, and it's one of the ones that it definitely made the biggest impact on me that I remember as a kid. Like I remember I used to just imitate sequences in that, and like it just totally got me. So I think that might have to be the one that I pick.
Nice. I like that question. That really makes you think.
That was a really good one. Yeah, David McHugh comes up with some winners. So I think, at least we could do is give him credit when he gets an answer right. Right. Yeah.
All right, guys. So next week we're going to be doing a.
Yeah, we actually know already. We know. Of time.
This is I'm not going to tell you, but it's a cult classic that I have never seen, and I am almost ashamed. I almost didn't even want to tell Brian I've never seen this movie.
And under this whole time, I will tell you, I assumed Tim has seen it because we talked about it. We have made jokes about it. We've referenced things from it. But that shows how iconic it is. And yet I was like floored when he said he hadn't seen it.
There is no reason whatsoever for me to have never seen this movie because I know the pop culture around it. I know phrases from it. I have talked about it on the show. I've never actually sat down and watched it from beginning to end. I don't know that I've ever seen, other than stuff from other horror documentaries, I've ever seen any clips from it. It's a travesty because it's from a director that I absolutely love, that I've seen tons of films by, and yet I've never seen this movie. And I almost, I don't know what made me think of it. I think I was thinking of other, because we've kind of been on this recurring theme of like going through films I've never seen that Brian can then make fun of me. But this one was easily, like Scanners, okay. That one was a bit of a gaping hole, but this one's like 10 times worse. I think you have to agree, Brian.
Yeah, this one I think will floor everyone when they find it, because we've discussed it actually on this show. And we've, it's like that's the crazy thing. And you did such a good job of and keeping it in such a veil of secrecy that you did such a good job. That like it almost like the legend grew that you've seen. Like to the point. Actually, in my head, it was one of your favorite movies, which is what's even crazier. That's how good a job you did.
Oh my gosh! I've kept this secret shame. I couldn't admit it. Then when you start talking about it, like I can't choose that moment to tell you I haven't seen it. I just have to just play along, because I can't just
it's
spring
like
that on you.
That hero moment, It's like you can't let your fans down at that.
That's
that
right.
Very last thing,
But you know what? I'm trying to make a conscious effort to fill in those gaps. We all have those gaps of this totally famous movie that everybody's seen except you for one reason or the other, and it's just I don't know why. I can't explain it, but
I'm
you'll
trying
find
to think
out
which ones I have in there. I'm sure there's some in there, but see, here's the problem with me. It's like there was a time when I saw so many things like once, and I haven't seen them in like 30 years. So it's like it's almost as if I didn't see it. So there's this like, I'm pretty sure I saw it kind of thing, and I'm like almost like 99% sure I saw it. So, but then again, there's there's movies like this one in question where it's been such a pop culture thing that you could actually almost convince yourself you've seen it without seeing it. It's like that level of things. So I'm wondering, I got to really think hard to see if there's any there that, that maybe I haven't seen.
We need to do that for you too. We need to. We had too many that I haven't seen. Like we need to flip it around.
Go look up some, because there's some little ones, but I'm trying to think of like the caliber of that I haven't seen.
Like hit some top horror lists and just look for ones like that seem famous that you haven't seen. But you guys out on social media, like try to guess if you can guess which movie we're doing next week that I haven't seen. I think it'd be fun to hear your guesses on what this movie is.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I can't wait to see the reaction though from the listeners when
I will tell you, it is a cult classic. It is a extremely famous horror director, and it's very quotable too. So I would please send in your guesses. I'm curious to see if people.
Yeah, I want to know. I have a feeling people might guess it, but I still think they won't believe it. That's a problem. Like they'll double think it or something, or overthink it. But
all right, guys. So we'll see you back here next week. And in the meantime, don't let any of your teenage girlfriends persuade you to go scare the neighbor across the street in the middle of the night.
Leave Julie alone.